everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Today we have a really special guest, Bruce Yang, who is the head of product at Triumph. We'll be talking about his journey to product management, as well as what the similarities and differences are between being a product manager at a small startup versus a big tech company. Welcome, Bruce. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Linda. Thanks for having me. Super excited to talk with you today. I just loved our previous conversations and always thought that you had such a great perspective. And yeah, excited to chat a bit about product.
Awesome. So I wanted to start off by giving the audience here an overview of a bit of your background. Can you tell us about your career so far and what motivated you into going into product management?
So for me, I've always liked technology since I was a kid, but what really made me jump right into product management was actually the death of my grandma. And her death really impacted me in like a really profound way in which I wasn't expecting. And intellectually, I always, you know about death, you know you're gonna die, but you don't really confront it very personally. And after she died, I really thought, what's my purpose here on Earth, and what's the world going to be like after I leave? And, do I even matter? What am I doing here? And technology has like a really, everything goes back to technology in terms of progressing the human experience. And over time, from, like the printing press to the internet to like AI, like all of that is changing lives. And I realized I didn't want to be like a passive observer while other people were building this future for me. And I would rather be an active participant in deciding this future. And product management is a great way to just focus on that, kind of like create new things and leave a little bit of a legacy, however big or however small, for the future, for future generations to build on. And you can really affect a lot of lives. So that's what really got me excited about product.
That's awesome. Let's just talk a little bit about, I know that most of your career has been in product management in startups, and most of my career has been in product management in big tech companies. So I thought it might be really interesting to talk a little bit about what are the big and like the similarities as well as the differences between the two.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of dive deep and double click into sort of the product management journey across both small startups as well as big tech companies. So at a small startup, how do you gather user insights, for example, research and data? Is this something that you have kind of a dedicated researcher and dedicated data scientist kind of looking and gathering insights, or are you a lot more hands-on? What does that look like?
Yeah, I'm a lot more hands-on because usually you don't have the luxury of having those people with that expertise. And so you kind of have to plug and play right in there. And so, I think no matter what size company you are, like you need to be close to the customer. Mm-hmm. But in a startup, particularly where you are pre-product market fit, it's even more important to talk to them as much as possible. And you can almost never do it too little. So really, I think talking to your potential customers, figuring out who are my customers. Mm-hmm. Like for our company, we went through a period where we're really close to product market fit. We think we know our customer. We're going to build all this stuff. And then we took a step back and realized maybe they're not actually our customer, mm-hmm. right? Maybe somebody else is our customer, or a different type of customer is actually more important. Yeah. And so that you really want to minimize the amount of time you waste, especially at a startup where, you have a runway, and if you don't find product market fit before your runway ends, then you die as a company. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of urgency, and you need to talk to customers. So usually I, do that myself. It's super important for any product person to do it themselves. Mm-hmm. And you got to make sure you have the right instrumentation to look at, especially B2C, where you don't get to talk to all the consumers. You really want to instrument so you have some data to go off of.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's pretty similar to a big startup, or I'm sorry, a small startup versus a big startup as well. I think while a big tech company, we have researchers that can really, understand from the perspective of the users. We're also really closely involved in the research piece as well. And then obviously we identify what our key metrics and KPIs are, and we instrument the app to make sure that we understand the user behavior as well. But I also remember I was working in the metaverse at Meta, and so it was kind of a smaller startup, if you will, in a big tech company. And similar to you, we had kind of our creators on Discord, and we were kind of talking directly with their customers. And so it's really insightful to have kind of that direct feedback from our users.
I have a question. So at big companies, do engineers typically get to talk with customers?
Yeah, we definitely try to encourage them. So we have research sessions where we have researchers kind of asking the research questions, and we basically have a viewing room of engineers and anyone that wants to be involved to kind of understand and see firsthandly how our customers are interacting with our product. So I would say that we typically rely more on our researchers to really be asking the questions, because they're the industry experts in terms of the design of the study. But we definitely also have our team involved in understanding and witnessing the interactions. Before the pandemic, we also used to go on research trips as well. So we took kind of the team, engineering, product, data scientists, researchers, and really to different countries to really understanding how our users were interacting with their products.
Yeah, that's something that I've been really trying to work on more, and it's been quite a struggle actually. Getting engineers to interact with customers, that's not hard. The hard part is to make sure that they interact in an appropriate manner, in which they're not like leading the witness with questions or asking about like very specific implementation.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I think is really important. But at a startup, I think you have to really start training, the engineers to interact with them, correctly.
Yeah, exactly. One other, I guess, really important question I think I have is, what do you think are the most important roles and responsibilities for a product manager at a startup versus a big tech company?
I think it's a mindset thing. So personally, I think of my job as I want to build a business. Mm-hmm. And what metrics are you held accountable for? To me, it's building a business from scratch with 0 customers to many customers. Mm-hmm. And that will include, marketing, and that will include sales, and that will include all these other things. And so figuring out ways to contribute in the best way possible for the org, I think that's a big responsibility. But fundamentally, I worry the most about building the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. And I think this is what truly separates great PMs from normal PMs. Mm-hmm. And almost nobody can actually tell. It's really hard to tell, because every PM can come up with features and like, oh, we should do this and this and this, right? And you'll build it, but if it's not the thing that you'll be using long term, it's kind of wasted time. And so everyone feels like they're getting a lot done. You're closing your sprints, there's all these tickets that are done, like, yay. And then later on, you just have this feature that you're building. And so one is that I think focusing on problems and solutions to problems as opposed to features. Like right now, we're building like a push notification system. And it's very easy to say, oh yeah, we have a mobile app, we need to build a push notification system. Let's build it, right? But I hate that. It's like, why are we building features? It doesn't make any sense. Like, we should be solving a problem. Okay, the problem that we're trying to solve is retention. How do we solve retention? Well, we need design it from scratch. We need a great FTUE, which is first time user experience. That way people will come back. And when you start talking about it through the lens of retention, you realize push notifications are just a tiny part of the solution. Mm-hmm. What we really need to work on is the first time user experience first, and then build push notifications. And all of a sudden, you change your all the features you're going to build in your strategy. So that's how I like to approach it.
I see, I see. And I guess from a big tech company standpoint, I think we have, like, similar to you, where we have a goal that we're trying to achieve. And then based on that, we look at how do we, basically, what is the strategy? How do we get there? And then from there on, I think a lot of what we do is stakeholder management. How do we get the teams on board? How do we get our leadership on board? How do we get our cross-functional teams also on board? For example, we may have to get buy-in from legal, from policy, from other teams where we might be wanting to launch on their surfaces. So I would say that that would be kind of the main difference between a product manager at a startup versus a big tech company, where I think stakeholder management is a much bigger piece. Whereas I think with the startup, right, you have a goal in mind, and then you are able to kind of work with your team to kind of figure out, what you want to build and make sure you're not building the wrong thing. So yeah, I think that's interesting.
So at big companies, do you ever feel like the feature is given to you, or the solution is given to you and you just have to execute it?
No, not necessarily. It depends, right? I think at Meta, because we work in pod teams, I think the biggest value for a product manager there is really understanding what problem that we're trying to solve and why we're solving it. So I would say that those are the two key questions that product managers ask themselves. And then our designers and our engineers are experts in their craft and what they do. So they typically work more on kind of the solutioning piece. But from a product management standpoint, we want to make sure that we have the right problem identified and where we can provide the biggest impact. So that's kind of, yeah.
Got it.
Cool. All right. So I know we don't have as much time right now, so maybe we'll touch upon maybe a couple more questions. How does your team approach roadmap planning?
Yeah. So my personal bias is I'm like really anti-roadmap a little bit compared to most people, I would say. I think roadmaps come at a terrible cost. And especially, and you definitely need them. But what I would say is they start really restricting you if you look at it like a document that you have to follow.
Yep.
And a lot of times, like, well, if you change a roadmap, now there's a whole bunch of other processes. Like you have to get buy-in and you have to go, circulate it and this and that and the other. So it starts making you less agile. And especially at a startup, you change very rapidly and frequently. And I would say of course you should have a long-term vision and abstract about who you want to be as a company, in 2 years and 5 years. But realistically, looking any further out than a few months and really planning for it, I think is not particularly helpful. So we try to just say, this is the problem. This is like the next 2 or 3 sprints, how we can go, and then we'll just continually evaluate.
Got it. So it's more 2-3 sprints, I would say, is about like a month and a half worth of kind of horizon that you guys look at. Got it. I would say it's somewhat similar. So at Meta, we do roadmap planning. We have a big one, which is around a half, so every 6 months, and then every quarter, so every 3 months, we have a check-in. But I would agree with you. Most of our planning, we plan. We spend a lot of time planning, but I would say chances are good that things will change even mid-quarter, and so we need to pivot and kind of adjust our plans. So I would say yes, I agree there, where it's good to have a long-term vision, but at the same time we need to be agile, and we learn quite a bit just depending on the tests that we run and the features and the products that we launch, and kind of be able to pivot if we need to from there. So
how does your roadmap work with the KPIs? Like, I guess roadmaps would be more effective if they're a little bit more ambiguous and geared toward goals as opposed to specific features. Is that what you guys did at Meta?
Yeah, so we basically have, from leadership, we have top goals that leadership wanted to maybe move and think about, for example, engagements, or in other orgs, maybe revenue or monetization. So specifically for me, I worked mainly on consumer, and we focus a lot more on engagement. So if we had kind of a engagement goal, we would look at we would work with my team to understand where the biggest problem areas are. We would do some initial assessments of where we have the biggest impact. And then from there on, we would basically look at, okay, here, maybe XYZ problems and XYZ solutions would enable us to move XYZ goal. And then from there on, we kind of, roadmap, accordingly. Again, based on initial tests that we do, maybe we had hypotheses that, hey, this might be the biggest mover of this metric, but ended up learning that it's not. So we would have to kind of come back and regroup and brainstorm. And so those are the cases where we may need to kind of pivot based on our learnings and our initial tests and our hypotheses as well.
Great.
But thank you so much, Bruce, for taking the time to chat with me. It was a really great conversation. I learned quite a bit.
Awesome. Yeah, it was nice talking to you, and I always love hearing your perspectives. And Helena's a great person to follow, and I've always leaned on her for bouncing some ideas off of and just making sure I got my head on straight. So yeah, thanks for chatting.
Yeah, same here.
Talk to you next time.
Yep, talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.